Well, hey, you're watching What Was That About? Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode. My name is Moses Khan. I'm joined with lead pastor of All People's Church, Dr. Tony Saldano. Pastor, how you doing today?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing well.
That's a really nice
Do you like it?
spring. Is that new?
No, it's not in here,
No?
but it's. I pull it out in the springtime.
Wow.
Yeah.
Welcome to spring.
Welcome to spring. Shout out to spring.
We love spring.
Yeah. Well, listen, we are talking about the reprobate mind. Big word.
Big word.
Big word. So we are right now in a series titled In the Last Days.
Yes.
Where, Pastor, you're talking about certain things that we are to expect, certain things that are going to happen, are currently happening, that are indications of the last days. So right off the bat, let me ask you, are we in the last days?
Well, I really believe we are in the, what Jesus called the beginning of sorrows. I believe we're in the birth pangs.
Okay.
So if we are not, I wouldn't say we're in the exact last days, because the last days really speak about that 7-year tribulation period, but we are certainly on the cusp of it. That's what I would say.
Yeah. So
Matthew 24,
yeah.
when Jesus said, these are the signs, I believe that's where we are.
Okay, so we're heading there, and as we head there, there are signs. The Bible warns us of things to look out for. And recently you preached a message on the reprobate mind.
Out of Romans.
This concept out of Romans chapter 1,
Yes.
verse 28, and I want to read it here. It says this, "And since they did not see fit to acknowledge God, God gave them up to a reprobate mind to do what ought not to be done."
Right.
God gave them over to a reprobate mind to do what ought not to be done. Sounds like a very interesting thing for God to do.
Yeah. 3 times, actually, it says in there that he gave them up, he gave them up, he gave them over. And really the premise is this. It's actually written in the past tense.
Yeah.
Which means Paul is telling the believers in Rome, this is what has happened. This is what is going to happen.
Yeah.
And what happened? Well, they rejected God. They refused to worship him. They refused to acknowledge him.
Yeah.
Paul says, why? Because they chose creation over the Creator.
Yeah.
And because of that, that's really the premise of it. God is saying, you've rejected me, you've acknowledged me, and by the way, he says, and you have no excuse. I've given you enough evidence that I exist.
Yeah.
But you intentionally focus on other things.
Right.
You trivialize me. You create your own gods, and you worship them. And therefore, I'm going to turn you over to this mindset, to this condition. That word reprobate really means to be rejected. It is a mind that doesn't function well.
Right.
In another place, Paul said it this way: professing to be wise, they've become fools.
Yeah.
Don't we hear a lot about that today? A lot of quote unquote wise, intelligent people that are mocking God. God says you're fools. You think you're smart, but in reality, you're foolish, and you have really started a process. It's almost like a timer. You've started a process now that cannot be stopped, because it's the wrath of God. It's the judgment of God.
Well, that's a very interesting thing, because oftentimes when we look at the wrath of God, the judgment of God, we think future.
Right.
We think day of judgment. We think, okay, we're all standing before the throne.
Right.
And there, the judgment of God is going to be released. And yet there is a judgment, clearly, that Paul is indicating, that is for now.
Right.
That is in this lifetime. And what an interesting judgment. That God doesn't say, hey, because you've turned to creation over the Creator, you're going to suffer. At least he doesn't say it in those words. But he says, if that's what you want, that's what you're going to get.
Right.
If you want to turn away from me, turn to yourselves, I'm actually going to give you that. And it's like the world doesn't see that as punishment, but you and I, who don't have reprobate minds, we have the mind of Christ. We can see things. We can, rightly divide. we know that that is probably one of the severest punishments you could possibly receive.
Right.
And so even in our world, as we see the alphabet people just continue to take more territory, more territory, more territory, and sometimes we scratch our heads and go, why? Why are they growing so much? Why are they expanding so much, gaining so much territory? Well, clearly, God has given them over to themselves,
Right.
over to their debased mind. And they might not see it, but their freedom is technically enslavement, and it's punishment.
Right. And Matthew 24, Jesus said, as it was in the days of Lot, so it's going to be when Jesus returns.
Right.
He says this is exactly what is going to happen, and this is what is happening, and it is happening at such an alarming rate. As a matter of fact, Paul lays it out there that you have the worship of creation, so all this like climate change, Mother Earth. Really, this falls under pantheism, the worship of many gods and the denial of the one true God. You have a sexual revolution. You have a homosexual revolution. Paul taught, and by the way, Paul and the women won't like this, but sequential order, it starts with the women. The women leaving their natural use, then the men leaving their natural use, men wanting to be women, women wanting to be men. Everything, everything is upside down. But you see, the big push is no. This is normal, and not only we started, Pastor Moses. We started with we just want acceptance. Now we're moving into we want we want dominion. We want to dominate you.
Right.
We're going to tell you whether we're going to redefine marriage, whether who can adopt children, what washroom you can go in, what locker room you can go in, who will compete against who,
Right.
whether it's the forcing of pronouns, how you will raise your children, and I believe it's all coming. That whether hey, if you want to work here, you better tick these boxes that you believe these things. I know the persecution that has already occurred. Of course, the media doesn't want to tell you. They don't want to talk about it. If you do talk about it, then you're a bigot, you're full of hatred, you're some sort of phobic. But these are the realities. People are being financially punished. They are being punished from an employment standpoint simply because they believe God. They have a Christian worldview of relationships, marriage, society.
Right.
And because of it, particularly in North America and in our country for sure, they are, and Paul goes into a whole list of what the attributes of these people are, and he nails it. Bullies, they're haters, they're aggressive, they're intentional.
That's right.
They're backbiters. Everything. What's interesting is everything they accuse people like us of, they are. They actually are those things. And I want to be very clear. We're not against people.
Right.
Here again, we're not against people. We're not against persecuting anybody. As far as I'm concerned, do what you want. God has given you a choice. You'll have to own the consequences of those choices. But the problem is it's coming into the church.
Yeah.
It's coming into the body of Christ.
Right.
The problem is it's coming into families. It's for sure it's in the schools, and it's affecting, children.
Yeah.
And Pastor Moses, just recently we heard about a high school right here in our city, a high school that, apparently there are two kids in the school. One identifies as a cat, one is a dog, and apparently they go around the school in all fours, and they're given bowls for milk. And
Oh my gosh.
That's not normal, people. That's insanity. That is, there's something wrong with young people thinking they are an animal, but we don't get them help.
Right.
No. We have to cater to that.
to them, yeah.
We have to cater to that because, that falls under queer expression.
Right.
We have to cater that, you think you're a dog? You think you're, this is why I'm saying we have lost our minds. And this is exactly what Paul is saying.
Yeah.
This is what the reprobate mind, it doesn't function well.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't function the way it's supposed to. And so you have all these weird things happening. We had an incident of, you mentioned that even during your message. of a school teacher who called kids boys and girls.
Right.
And got written up for it.
Right.
And was told if they say that they're a cat, then you better address them as a cat.
Right.
And it's like, how far, how far does this have to go before people realize that it's, it is insane. Mentally, they are not healthy. They are not right. And it is, I think, criminal that we don't help them and we feed into the mental health issues that they're clearly displaying. I think people who feed into that, they should have some sort of consequences of not allowing kids to be kids, and we now live in a world where if a kid says whatever they say, and it's like, okay, well, I guess that's who you are because you clearly understand the world and you understand yourself.
Yeah.
And you're self-aware enough, and so if you want to be a monkey, you can be a monkey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I guess a couple of things that I see. Number one is the erosion of parental authority has, particularly by the school system and the government, has brought us to this place because there's an agenda. How can you get to these children unless you erode parental authority? There used to be a day when a mom or a dad, right, called the school because there was a problem that, people listened. Now they don't care.
No.
Forget calling. We have... we did a whole program on the individual there with the prosthesis breast there, right? Yeah. Man, there were threats of lawsuits by parents. There were all kinds of very aggressive, passionate meetings. It doesn't matter. These boards have been sold out.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter what parents think. It doesn't matter what they say, and immediately, they want to arm these children, arm them with this idea that you can make decisions. You can make decisions if you want to mutilate your sexual organs. And immediately under this quote unquote affirming, philosophy, start with puberty blockers and, God help you if your child comes home and says, they think they're one of the other genders and you don't react. They call you the abuser. That's child abuse because you're suppressing the child.
Right.
Yet I don't even think a child can go to a tanning bed before a certain age. They can't vote before a certain age. But you're telling me that as soon as they speak of any kind of gender, which, by the way, they're not even coming up with it on their own. They are being indoctrinated. Yes, indoctrinated. Because, Pastor Moses, it's become the cool thing, particularly, transgender now. It's like it's a fad.
Yeah.
It's like coloring your hair. It's like the sign of rebellion and standing up against the system. If I have any kind of emotional issue or I want to somehow, rebel against the system, I'm transgender. Now, every generation, you were a rebellious kid. You had your ways, right?
Yeah.
And maybe you can talk about that. But, usually you got into fights or, you were rebellious and maybe caused some trouble. But this, because people grow out of that. This has permanent consequences involved here. Yep. Like, I don't know. Talk about that you were a rebellious kid and you came through it.
Yeah, I was. And my parents whooped me and, it was good for my mental health. And I'm a better person because of it. And, even if kids want to, in, their childlikeness, imagine things and pretend to be things, well, that's what it is. Let's call it that. You know what I mean? And let's bring them out of that into the reality of the real world and who they are. Yeah. And so it's like, every generation has something, that they think is the thing that's going to, make them different or make them stand out or is going to rebel against the norm that, quote unquote, they've been birthed into and forced into.
Yes.
And it's like eventually you grow out of that. Eventually you realize, hey, this is how society actually functions well. And and to then go against that would be the wrong thing to do. Yeah. Especially in such a permanent way where it has to do with their growth, their development, their hormones, body parts, and all of that. And it's like when this child comes to his or her right mind, well, they're going to be completely destroyed.
Yeah. You made a comment earlier about how far. I really don't think there is a limit to how far they will go.
Yeah.
because they keep pressing the envelope. They keep pushing. They keep pushing. And every time we think, well, it can't get any worse, somehow they find ways. As a matter of fact, Paul says right there, they find ways of wrecking people's lives. They find ways, they invent ways of being more evil, more wicked. And then you have a group of people that, come alongside it. And rather than say, hey, the sexualization of children is wrong, the mutilation of children is wrong. No, they applaud it, and we become somehow the the troublemakers and the evil people and the abusers. We've already had some hatred on online and comments, and people saying that we need to get off the internet, and even people that they wouldn't know Jesus if he slapped them in the face. Writing scriptures on our you know what I mean. Don't write scriptures. You want to make a comment. If you don't know Christ, don't be putting your religious spirit. Make your comment. But it's amazing. But this is the depraved mind.
This is it.
And it's what Isaiah said. Evil will be good. Good will be evil. Light will be dark. Dark will be light. Everything is upside down. Everything is upside down. And you and I, people like us, we look at this and we go, it's madness. Now, Pastor Moses, let me say this. I really believe that there are people that are not even followers of Jesus that are looking at this and going, this is just nutty. Like, this is like, you know what I mean? Not everybody's lost their senses, but you see, you're shamed, you're intimidated. People are afraid to voice their opinion because they're going to be attacked. And, we have people in very high places that fuel these things. We have the media that fires these things up. And you know what, my friends? We need to push back. We need to say, enough. This has gone far enough. And we cannot allow the insane to run the asylum any longer. We need to get a hold of our senses, and just common, decent, everyday people need to speak up, because your children, it is your children that are at risk. Why the children, Pastor Moses? They know that if they can, if you indoctrinate the children, you own the future. That's what it's all about. They don't care about people like, for us, people like us, it's like maybe, I don't know, it's like they get bonus points or something, but air miles points, whatever. But it's the children. That's the prize. That's what they're after.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Well, listen, I hope this conversation was insightful, and hopefully you feel stirred up, even in your heart there. And listen, I still believe that there is a majority that, even though they're quiet, they see things the way they're supposed to be. And so use your voice. Have intellectual conversations with individuals. Bring them out of their delusion and bring them to a logical conclusion about the world and about humanity. You have the power to do that. You have the voice to do that. And so I encourage you to do that. Listen, if you're not subscribed, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Please share this and like this video. It allows us to get the content out to as many people as possible. Pastor, thank you for this conversation, your leadership.
Thank you.
And appreciate you. We'll see you on the next episode. God bless.